Innovation and Startup Policy, which is basically created by MHRD Innovation Cell as a part of Niti Aayog, as a part of this planning mission with respect to Startup India and Invest India Federation. And I'm glad to see, or I can say I'm glad to virtually visit DY Patil campus, Pimpri, for the second time. Last time I was maybe in 2016 somewhere. I was there physically present for one of the session on Make in India for pharmaceuticals, and as a result of which I could start my journey into Make in India and Startup India. So today, for all the participants, I basically believe that the participants here are basically B.Pharm, M.Pharm, PharmD students, along with a few of the faculty members. And I'm going to share you three parts or three nuggets during this entire presentation, through which I'm going to share or enlighten on what industry, what government, or what the university and MHRD basically expects from the students, the faculty, or precisely saying the innovators or the researchers. Because ideally when we see our research, or before I actually go in detail with my presentations and all, I have all those presentations ready. But when I see the students or the researchers or even the faculty members who are working, let's talk about precisely pharmacy institutions. No doubt we have n number of paper presentations, research presentations, publications, articles, maybe by faculty members, undergraduate students, even M.Pharm students. They are quite good in their research. But when it comes to research commercialization, hardly only 0.1% of research commercialization is there. And that's the prime objective behind all this, or this entire policy of national innovation and startup policy. What we require as a society or as a country, that whatever research we have, whatever innovation we have, we needs to commercialize them. We needs to, bring up some of the products, some of the services, and your resource or your innovation should be utilized for a society. So that's the reason. See, unless and until your research is being utilized for society, it is of no use. We have so many patents, we have publications, we have presentations, but that's just on the paper. We are creating all those research publications and presentations there, but unless and until it gets commercialized, unless and until we bring down some of the products in the market, we bring down a commercialized products in the market, it is of no use. So ideally what we think, or ideally what we believe in this national innovation and startup policy, that we should or we must commercialize our research. It may be by second year B.Pharm student, it may be by first year M.Pharm student, it may be by any of the faculty. Whatever research you have, you may have research in cosmetics, you may have research in maybe some herbal formulation is there. It can be anything, or maybe some of the group of the students, they are creating some of the portable diagnostic kits or medical devices which have to be commercialized. They have to bring down in the market. Now, considering Pune, we do have best case studies, based success stories when we consider healthcare startups. Live Health is one of the example, which is India's leading healthcare startup, which is from Pune. My Lab Discovery Solutions, which has been had a successful story during this COVID-19, and it is based in Lonavala, Pune. So even all these startups, we have even Mediasha Technologies, which is being incubated at COEP's Bhavi Incubation Center. Even that has a clear-cut case study or a success story when it comes to a healthcare startup. So we do have that potential. Only thing is, you have to see how you can commercialize your innovation, your research into a successful product or successful service. So that is the core of this National Innovation and Startup Policy 2019. It was basically initiated in 2016. Later on, the version 2 came up on their website in 2019. Now, being a pharma professional, when I see this entire aspect, we at OpEx, we basically guide or mentor the startups from agri-tech, from fintech, from even e-commerce. Even there are some of the food startups as well. But I personally, when I see to this perspective, I basically focus more on healthcare startups. Being a pharma professional, I know how this industry works, how we have this healthcare, unorganized healthcare sector, and it has been more, concentrated or focused during this COVID-19 pandemic. Indian healthcare system, we have hell lot of problems, a number of issues we have, and these all issues have been focused during the last 8 to 9 months of COVID-19 pandemic. You all, as a pharma professional, should consider all these challenges, all these limitations, all these problems of Indian healthcare sector or Indian healthcare system as an opportunity. You could just visit any of the multi-specialty hospitals, maybe surrounding to Pune, or you consider any of the villages nearby to Pune or nearby to, or any of the villages or tier 3, tier 4 regions of Maharashtra. You can see the kind of healthcare sector which we have at tier 3, tier 4, even at metro cities. You can sense there are a number of issues and number of limitations which probably our patients have, probably the hospital pharmacist, whoever working is there, so he may have some of the issues. Even the surgeons, they have some of the issues. So try to identify the problems and then try to brainstorm with all your members how you can solve these problems. And when you solve these problems based on your theoretical knowledge, based on the market knowledge which you have, based on the kind of the technology which we have, because most of the startups, they are coming with the 7-star technologies, which we call the artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud, big data. So how can utilize all these technologies to bring down the solution of for this particular problem? Okay. I know maybe most of the students, whenever they come up with their solution or their idea, they feel like, because they are from medical or pharma background, they could feel that I do not have any knowledge about artificial intelligence or how I can integrate machine learning in my startup or in my product. In that case, you need to see, or you need to identify such a co-founder who has a base of engineering. This is how you need to bring down or build a team, right? Now, working or whenever you are studying at the campuses like DYP group, you have all the students, or a multi-dimensional campus. You have management students, you have pharma students, you have engineering students. Try to make a group or try to build a team which has a blend of all these specialties or all these the dimensions. And this is how you can bring down or build a team, so that you can foster or you can facilitate your own innovation into a startup, right? So I'll be sharing you one of my presentation through which we can discuss more on that. Yeah. Is my presentation visible to all? Please type yes if it is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So here I am going to discuss National Innovation and Startup Policy in 3 different parts. First of all, I'm going to share you national or Indian startup ecosystem, how this startup or why this startup is a buzzword, and how we as a country, as an India, we are marching towards to have everything at place. Next one, the second part, that's the core part, where I'll be sharing all 10 essential highlighting points of National Innovation and Startup Policy. And last, the trend or the Indian healthcare startup ecosystem. This is how you can try to analyze or identify the need of having a healthcare startup ecosystem. And there are some of the sectors and subsectors in healthcare startups as well, which we can later discuss in the third part. Just a moment. Yeah. So first let's discuss about, or first let's understand what is startup. So startups are basically any business which has innovation. Now here you need to differentiate a startup between a startup and a traditional business. Now there are many of the students or many of the professionals who have started maybe a franchisee store. Maybe in Pune you have started a franchisee store of Wellness Forever. Let's consider Wellness Forever. You have started a franchisee store of Wellness Forever. There you cannot claim that business as a startup. So startup is any business which has an innovation. That innovation can be in a product or in a process, or even the latest trend, it can be an innovation in business model. Now when it comes to innovation in business model, I can draw some of the examples, like P is the best example which has brought innovation in business model, or Paytm is the one who has brought an innovation in business model. So either you should have innovation in process or product or in business model. Now when we consider innovation, let's consider a process. Whenever you modify any process which can ideally bring convenience, which can ideally bring down or cut down the cost, or it can ideally solve a problem of the customer, so that can be called as an innovation. So ideally, at the end of the day, your business, your product or service, it should solve the pain point of the customer. You pick any startup, you pick Flipkart, you pick even Paytm, Oyo, Swiggy, Zomato, Bajus, even Tesla, even SpaceX. You consider any startup, maybe a LinkedIn, maybe Airbnb, it can be any startup. At the end of the day, the core of the startup remains the same, that it should solve customers' pain point. It should solve customers' burning problem. If your product or your service is not helping customers to solve their problem, your product is of no use. Your process is of no use, right? One more thing, you need to have a clear-cut understanding that invention is not innovation and innovation is not invention. So there are two different parts, like we have studied during our 12th or during our early age, like invention is different and innovation is different. So make sure that whatever innovation you are doing, either it should be in product or in a process or in a business model. So startup is a business with innovation. So don't consider a traditional business as a startup, right? Because you are the first generation entrepreneur, because you are the one who have started at early age, you cannot become a startup founder. Being a startup founder, he should create innovative business model or innovative businesses, right? Now when I talk about Indian startup ecosystem, today we have more than 38,000 officially startups which are recognized till date or till April 2020. Now what is this recognized startup all about? Now we have a startupindia.gov.in. That's the official website which our government has launched in 2015, where they have particularly official recognition for the startups. Now when you have some innovation in your business, what you have to do is, if you feel that your innovation or your business has some innovation, you can just register your company or your business to Startup India official portal. If government or the team of Startup India finds innovation component in your business, then they will issue a certificate of recognition to your startup. Now this certificate of recognition, more than 38,000 startups in India have been received this certificate of recognition. Number two, Startup India does not offer you any direct funds. Now, because our startup has been recognized by the Startup India or Government of India, we are not getting any funds out of it. That's just a certificate of recognition by using which we can attract some investor, using which our credibility or accountability of startup will be enhanced. And that's the use of this certificate of recognition. So right now we have more than 38,000 official startups. Now, when we consider number of Indian startups and their growth in 2016, some 4 years back, we had only 516 startups. But later on in 2 years, we had more than 8,000, and today we have 38,000 Indian startups. So if you could see the growth of the Indian startups, we can call it as mushroom growth for Indian startups. These startups are growing like anything. Today, India is the third largest country for startup hub, for claiming startup hub on this planet. Now, when we see sector distribution out of this 38,000 startups, Maharashtra ranks number one. So today, Maharashtra has more than 3,500 startups in the entire state. Following to Maharashtra, next we have Karnataka and then Delhi. Now, interesting fact here is like Bangalore, considering state-wise, Maharashtra is number one, but when we consider city-wise, majority of the startups are in Bangalore, and that's the reason why we call Bangalore as the Silicon Valley of the India, right? So Bangalore has seen more tech startups, and because of which Karnataka is at number two. Now, coming back to sector-wise distribution, we have, or precisely Make in India campaign has identified 25 different sectors, right? So out of which healthcare is one of the sector, IT is one of the sector, robotics is one of the sector, agriculture is one of the sector, food, textile, automobile. These are some of the sectors has been identified by Niti Aayog. Okay. Now, out of 38,000, majority of the startups, they are in IT services. 15.2% are in IT services. 9.2% are in healthcare and life sciences still that, but the COVID-19 pandemic and following to the rise of the healthcare startups in India, we are expecting within 5 years, by 2025, we may have majority of the startups in healthcare, right? After which 7.6 in augmented reality, virtual reality, 4.4% in food and beverages, then agriculture, fintech, retail, green technology, renewable energy. So this is sector-wise contribution or sector-wise analysis, classification of all these startups. So India right now is the third largest ecosystem on this planet. And right now we are home to 32 unicorn startups. Now, when I say unicorn startups, now what is the meaning of unicorn startups? So unicorn startups are any startup which has more than 1 billion valuation. So for this, we have Paytm, we have Byju's even. So right now we have 32 unicorns. Now, coming back to why third largest startup ecosystem. Now, who is number one and who is number two? So of course, US is number one, which has more than 1 lakh startups. China is of course number two position. Even in the listing of unicorn startups, the startups which has more than 1 billion valuation, US has more than 240 startups who have or who are unicorn startups. China is nearer to 240 as well, but India, number three position, we have just 32 unicorn startups. Next to this is basically a regulation and then the analysis part. So up till December 2018, we are having approximately 5,000 startups in healthcare, 5,000 startups, more than 5,000 startups in technology startups. New startup addition in 2019, we're 2,300. Now, one interesting fact here is whatever startups we have in our country, 68% of these startups are based in cities. So startup base, when we call or when we take in consideration like Bangalore, the cities like Bangalore, Delhi, NCR and Mumbai, they eventually form 68% startup base. But currently in the last 1.5 years, the number of startups in Pune are rising and they are crossing the number of startups from Mumbai. So Pune is doing very good. Even the success stories from Pune-based startups are coming ahead, and we expect that in the next 2 years, the cities like even Pune, even Ahmedabad, even Delhi, they are forming a great startup base. Even Hubli is the one. Probably you may have gone through the Hubli as well. Hubli, they have exceptional startup hub, and they are coming with very good technology startups at their location. Next to this, 540 startups. We have only 540 startups which are actually focusing on India's core problems. Now, when I say India's core problems, it can be anything. It can be right from a pollution to population. It can be a crime, women safety, or wastewater treatment, or waste management, sanitation, hygiene. It can be anything. But there we have only 540 startups which are actually focusing on solving India's core problems. Now, let's consider this as an opportunity where you can work to solve or to identify and then solve India's core problems, where you can eventually set up or brainstorm some of the solutions to solve these core problems. We call this as social entrepreneurship. So when you have a social entrepreneurship, then it is quite easy for you to raise funds for these particular startups. Now, consider social entrepreneurship aspect. There are many funding ways as well through which you can raise the funds, and as a part of which you can even have the funds from crowdfunding as well. Okay. Next to this, active incubators and accelerators. Now, many of the students, you have come up with incubators and accelerators. Now, let's first understand what is incubator. Now, you may have, come up with this word incubator. Maybe you have heard this word in hospital, incubator. Now, what is the use of incubator in hospital? So whenever we have a premature baby, when a premature baby borns, and we keep that baby in incubator. Why we keep that baby in incubator? Because the reason why we keep is basically to facilitate the environment which she requires unless and until she gets matured. Maybe for 2 days, maybe for a week, maybe for 15 days. Similar is the role for institutional incubation center, where if you have any idea, then that is nothing but a premature baby. So idea at first stage, it is nothing but a premature baby, and you need to facilitate the favorable environment to that idea or that premature baby at institutionals incubation center, where incubation center will support, will mentor, will guide all these ideas to mature enough to or to launch their product in the market. So at this point of time, incubation centers, they basically play as a role of facilitators, where they facilitate all the services which are required for startups. Similar is the role of accelerators, but accelerators are basically private organizations, where accelerators, they are basically are the one who scale up or who help startups to scale up. So when it comes to pre-incubation or incubation, it is the role of institution, and when it comes to a final product, then it is the role of accelerators to scale up these particular startups, right? So accelerators, they work hand in hand with incubation centers, as well as investors, as well as startup founders. So we have today 210 active incubators and accelerators, out of which in Maharashtra we have only 13 accelerators, and we are proud being one of the 13 accelerators in Maharashtra state. More than 1700 startups we have which uses advanced technology like AI, analytics, IoT. One more interesting part here is the average age of startup founder. So average age of startup founder in India is 28. That's quite young age. You take a risk and then you start your journey of startup. Now, When we consider age factor, there we can understand why MHRD has designed this National Innovation and Startup Policy for institutions, because institutions, they have the students right from the age of 20 to 22 or 20 to 24, where when we introduce them the idea of entrepreneurship or the idea of startups at such early stage, they could work for their innovation model for literally for 2 years, and they can become young entrepreneur even at the age of 23 or 24. We have uh, much or many more success stories where we have seen the founder of Oyo or the founder of Byju's at this young age, they have started or they could start their unicorn startups. Now, here you have to focus more on the third tab, that is student startups. Now, let's understand what is student startup, because eventually at IITs and IIMs, this has been trending right now. The students who are in second year and third year, whatever projects they have assigned by their faculty or by the institutions, or they have chosen by the students group. So in that way, the student startups, the number of student startups are growing at the rate of 30%. Okay, so these are the students who, when at second year or third year, they work more on projects and they see to it how I can commercialize my project. Now, if we see today's scenario in most of the institutions, almost all the students, they have this project, but that's just for the sake of submission, just for the sake of examination, just for the sake of viva, and finally marks. Now, these are the students who are not at all caring about marks, not about grades, even not about placements. They are looking like, if I am innovating something in my project, how I can commercialize my project and build a product. Maybe I could take more than 1 year for this particular journey. And that's the reason why NISP, why MHRD has introduced NISP, so that students can avail all the opportunities at campus. Maybe they can have a relaxation in attendance, maybe they can have relaxation in their examination, maybe they can have 24/7 access to incubation center, so that they can work more on their innovation. They have to see how I can build a prototype and bring down this product in the market. So their idea is, the students who are in most of the top universities and institutions where the startup ecosystem has been built, these students are purely thinking like, by the end of the graduation, before I graduate from this institution, I should start my own startup. So at the end of my graduation, I'm not at all caring about placements and all, or even the jobs and salaries and packages. I'm just looking like, if I'm doing something, if I'm innovating something, I should be on my own beliefs and confident that after my graduation, I should continue with my own product or my own business, right? Now, educational qualification, when we see 50% of the Indian startup founders are engineers, and that's we do not have any surprising thing out of this, because India is a country where we have majority of the engineers. If you sum up engineers of US and China, even then number of Indian engineers are more. So even Indian startup founders, 50% Indian startup founders have engineering base. Now let's come up to the discussion of the second part of the session, that is National Innovation and Startup Policy. Now let's first discuss about why, and then what and how. Okay, so this is fragmented again in three parts. First, let's discuss about why National Innovation and Startup Policy, then what startup policy is all about, and then the third part, that is how you can implement NISP policy at institute level, so that you can build this startup ecosystem at your campus. So right now, present day, at any Indian institute, maybe engineering, maybe management, maybe a pharmacy institution, it is, the surprising thing here is only 0.1% research commercialization is there at institute level. So that's the point which I was explaining at the beginning of my session, that research is of no use until it is utilized for society. So right now, whatever publications, presentations we all have at academic level, only 0.1% has been commercialized for the use of the society. And this is true in all the institutions: engineering, management, pharmacy, paramedical, it can be anything. Number two, institutes are focusing more on generating job seekers rather than job creators. So job seekers, like, we are more on training students more on employability, right? We are preparing them ready for the job. Ideally, when even whenever I visit any institution, hardly 5 to 10% students are there who are genuinely interested to start this entrepreneurial journey, and 5 to 10% is almost negligible for us whenever we consider a market for startup, right? Number three, most surprising fact which we all as pharma professionals should understand is 90% of Indian healthcare startups are by the engineers and not from medical or healthcare professionals. Now, this is a surprising thing. We or only 10% professionals are there who could build healthcare startups. So even 90% healthcare startups are there, and the founders of these healthcare startups are actually engineers, right? So this is basically an alarming situation for all of us, because we hardly have very few startup founders who have a base or a pharma professional, or in that case healthcare professional. So we see to it, because we have whatever theoretical knowledge we would require, or whatever practical knowledge or industry knowledge we all have, but again, when it comes to technology commercialization, we are neglecting that part, and that's the need of this NISP. Okay, so if we have this scenario, then we have to anyways implement this NISP, which is basically a guiding framework for all the higher education institutions. Okay, now this is a cover page of National Innovation and Startup Policy 2019 for students and faculty. Earlier, it was launched in 2016. So many of the amendments has been done by Mr. Dipen Sahu, who is closely associated with us as an accelerator. So Mr. Dipen Sahu is the one who is basically a member or the initiator of this NISP under the guidance of Dr. Abhay Jere sir. So MHRD, with the guidelines by the Startup India as well as Niti Aayog. So Startup India is basically a program run by Niti Aayog, and Startup India has different aspects, like under the umbrella of Startup India, is like we are working as an accelerator. Similarly, institutions are working as an incubation center. Similarly, they have listed mentors. Similarly, they have investors, and this all comes under the umbrella of Invest India Federation. Okay, so this is how it works, and this is how the hierarchy is for NISP. So this is a startup ecosystem which I was telling at the initial level. So when we try to build this startup ecosystem at institute level, we should consider all the members or all the stakeholders so that we can create this ecosystem, and starting with the supporting organizations like institutions as an incubators, we as an accelerators, or the mentors, technical expertise, or business consultants, government bodies. Similarly, funding organizations, like you should connect with angel investors or seed funds or VCs. Then you should have the knowledge of local and global market as well. So based on the need of the market, you should create your own product. So you should have that knowledge about your local and global market as well. In government policies and regulatory framework, like how we have this NISP, then we should have a clear-cut understanding and knowledge about IPR and R&D. So if you have innovation, then you should register with this IPR and all the practices which we do or which has been recommended by government. And last, universities and service providers, where the actual startups are going to work. Okay. Now, if you want to start the startup ecosystem at educational campus, this is how we promote this model. So this is our own model which we have started in many of the engineering institutions and even at pharmacy institutions. So at institute level, this is how the ideas flow, and then this is how we can transform these ideas into a product, into a market, and then it gets scale up so that you can start a successful startup. So let's consider if any group of students, they have some ideas to solve the customer's pain point or market's pain point. They are at beginning level, at initial level, at idea stage. So idea to prototype is the pre-incubation one level, which we call as idea validation. Unless and until you validate your idea, unless and until you assure that whatever idea I have or whatever product I am building, that is of use for the society, you cannot validate your idea. So at first level, pre-incubation one, you transform your idea into a prototype. Prototype is nothing but a working model. It can be anything. If you are formulating some of the hair oils which has some of the USP or some of the advantages over the other branded one, then you should okay. So yes, idea to prototype. Now at this point of time, you should able to transform your idea into a prototype, and later on we have this pre-incubation 2, where if you have some working model, if you have some prototype, for example, yes, I was talking about hair oil. Suppose you have formulated some of the hair oil which you think that it can create a value to the customer, then you should bring down some of the 10 samples of your working model or your prototype, or simply a sample. If you have these 10 samples with 10 different formulations, or maybe a similar kind of formulation which is tested enough, then you can give it to some of the 10 customers. So these are the teaching customers, and these should be the strangers one. You cannot give it to your friends and family members. These should be absolutely your teaching customer. They should be strangers, and based on their feedback, then you are working on modifying your prototype. That is nothing but prototype to incubation, right? At incubation level, when you reach at certain level, then we are we have completed pre-incubation, and now we are starting with incubation, right? Now this is the time where you have, or you have with you, a perfect product. Now how you can make money out of your product, that is nothing but studying the entire business model, right? So for example, if you have hair oil and that's enough, getting results from the, or getting good results and feedback from the customers, the initial teaching customers, then you are done with your product. Now see to it how you can build a pricing strategy for this. Then you can bring a business model for this. Then all the lessons of business management you should learn at this level, from incubation to market, which we call as POC stage, proof of concept, right? And for this matter, you need a co-working space where you, along with your 4-member, 5-member team, you should sit enough in enough space at your institute, at institutional campus. Institutions should provide this incubation center where they can have some cubicles, like cabins they should have. So we call this as co-working space, where they can have the authority to expand or to work in at whatever time they require. So this incubation center should be available to the students or the group of the students who are working in the startups 24/7. And then institute should provide some of the funds to these incubatees. The incubatees are the one who are actually the startup groups. Now eventually, when you are ready with product as well as its business model along with whatever uh, the strategies which you have made as a business. You should have a legal entity as well. You should register with your company, maybe a private limited, maybe a LLP formation, maybe a sole proprietorship. When you are ready with that, then you should launch that product in the market, and then rest is the acceleration part, where you try to accelerate your product, when you try to scale up your product. So this is how idea to product actually runs at institute level, or for student startups, right? Next to this is some of the highlighting elements which has been mentioned in NISP. So I'll be sharing all those 10 pointers of NISP in short. So the point one for National Innovation and Startup Policy in 2019 for students and faculties is strategies and governance. So institutions, first of all, what they have to do is institutions should start with startup cell or incubation center, and they should create their own financial strategy, where it is expected by government that institutions should reserve minimum 1% fund of the total annual budget of the institution. So it is the part of the institution that they should reserve at least 1% fund. It may be possible that they should have, or they may have more than 1%, but the minimum 1% fund of their total annual budget be separately listed or termed as innovation fund. So that's the first recommendation which NISP gives to the institution: minimum 1% fund to be reserved for all the activities for startup and entrepreneurship at the campus. Number two, there are many institutions basically who struggle with the financial strategies and all, and they could not manage this 1% fund. But it is recommended that they should have 1% fund. Plus, institutions can raise the funds by different government schemes, funding schemes, like DT, we have Department of Science and Technology, we have DBT, we have MHRD, AICT, TBD, we have DSIR, CSIR, we have Startup India, Invest India, MSME, and we have n number of policies. Atal Incubation Center, we have SIDB. So there are unlimited government schemes for institutions to raise the funds, right? So it ranges from 10 lakh rupees up to 2 CR. Even Atal Incubation Center, if institutions are qualifying for Atal Incubation Center, they could get a funding of 5 CR, plus 5 CR will be done by the CSR funding as well. Okay, so this is how you can raise the funds up to 10 CR to work or to sustain your incubation center. Plus, you can raise the funds from CSR activities as well. For example, let's talk about Deshpande Foundation. In Pune, we have Deshpande Foundation, and as a part of foundation, they have their own CSR funds to promote all activities. Suppose maybe in Pune you have Serum Institute. So Serum Institute may have a CSR fund, and 1 to 2% funding should be there or should be utilized for CS activity. So this is how you can connect with industries, you can connect with multiple corporates, and you can ask them that they should utilize their CSR fund for your incubation center, right? So this is how you can bring down your own strategies and governance. Number two is startups enabling institutional infrastructure. Now, what institutions have to do for this number two part? That first of all, as I said earlier, institutions should organize, or it should build their own infrastructure, like incubation center they have. Now, in majority of the institutions where we are consulting these institute campuses or university campuses, what we are consulting them that probably they may have some 1 or 2 laboratories which are vacant, where they do not use this infrastructure, or they may have some of the additional part in their library. So we actually expect a space like 2000 to 5000 square feet or square meter at institutions, where we recommend institutions that they should build some 4 to 5 cubicles. These will be the exclusive cabins for the startup teams or incubators, where the teams will come, they will sit along with their team, and all the facilities and utilities will be there for these students. They can use this facility 24/7, just like how they can use this thing, their library. So there you should arrange for them the computers, the printers, all the utilities, the all the resources which are required for any startups to start with. Okay. Then one more thing, institutions, if say for example, if your institution has approached Atal Innovation Mission for funding, or let's say MSME for funding, and in order to receive funds to start incubation center, your institution cannot accept that funding because it is a private organization. In that case, your incubation center should be registered as SPV. What is SPV? SPV is nothing but special purpose vehicle, where your institution's incubation center should register as a company, maybe a section 8 company, or any society, so that government is going to disburse the funds on SPV's account, or that section 8 company's account. So similarly, let's consider COEP. We have College of Engineering Pune, but they cannot accept the funds on COEP's account. This matter, they have Bhau Incubation Center, the incubation center for COEP. So the Bhau Incubation Center is a section 8 company which is precisely for all startup and incubation activities. So this is how you can do. Number 3, if you are serving your student startup groups, then it is expected that you should sustain your incubation center. For that matter, what you can do is you can take the rental from these student startups, or you can take equity from those student startups. Right? Next to this, nurturing innovation and startups. Now, when we have this different research and innovation fragment at institute level, what we do is, for third year students, for final year students, even for MPharm students, we allot some of the projects. We ask them to work on some live projects. In that matter, here we should create, or we should design a curriculum where students who wish to be a part of entrepreneurship, or who wish to choose entrepreneurship as a career, for them we should design a separate curriculum where they are allowed to visit a market, where they are allowed to collect the problems, and then they have to brainstorm a solution for that. So similar kind of curriculum should be designed by institutions, and it should be, or it should align with NISP policy. So these students, maybe 5 to 10% of the from the entire campus should or can be a part of this curriculum, where right from the beginning they will actually study what is startup is all about and how they can be part of this. Now, when it comes to how institutional or how this incubation center can charge student startups, so it is advisable that you can take rent from incubators, you can take rent from the student startups, plus you can even have 2 to 9.5% equity from that startup. So if today someone is working on the startup, it is not, or it is basically difficult for them to pay a rental to the institution. In that matter, they cannot pay the rental, but they can offer 2 to 9.5% share or equity of their own startup. So maybe after 5 years, that startup has a valuation of say 10 lakh rupees or 1 CR, out of which this incubation center can get 2 to 9.5% of their equity, so that they can sustain, they can use this center for commercialization. And this is recommended by government itself. That even I have seen many of the engineering students, they have extremely great infrastructure and they offer all the services for the startups. In that matter, there are some of the institutions, academic institutions in India, they ask for 30% of the equity, 20% of the equity. It is not recommended by government. So you can take maximum 9.5% of equity in these startups. Even the faculty members who are working in incubation center, they should be paid for their services. If suppose, for example, 20% of the time that faculty is uh, you know utilizing for all the incubation center activities, then he should get 20% of the whatever equity you have taken from the startups. 20% of this, that faculty should get. So this will basically combine with his role in academics as well as in innovation commercialization or innovation activities as well. Next is product ownership rights for technologies developed at institute. As we know everything about IPR, we whatever innovation we have, we can claim it for patent, we can have copyright, we can have trademark, and institute should promote a facility for this IPR as well. So if someone has an innovation component, institutionals innovation fund should be reserved for applying for this patent. Plus the uh, ownership ownership of that innovation should be reserved to inventors as well as institute. So institute will have equal ownership on that technology part or on that product ownership, right? Then organizational capacity and human resource and incentives. As I said earlier, if some faculty is working in this incubation center, he is utilizing his own time. Institutions or that incubation center should appoint his own position. Like whenever we design incubation center, we have positions like CEO of incubation center, we have incubation manager, we have incubation assistant. So similar kind of positions can be created at institutions incubation center, provided CEO and incubation manager are the full-time position. So if someone who is actually handling his academics plus he is handling academic position, it is not recommended in that case. So incubation center should have a full-time CEO and full-time incubation manager. Next to this, the next part is creating innovation pipeline and pathways. Now, what is innovation pipeline? So even in that matter, whenever institutions, maybe in engineering institutions, what we do is first year we design a curriculum, and there we actually start with this pipeline. We call this as innovation funneling. Okay, so in that funneling activity, at stage one, we basically interact with 500 students. Out of 500 students, only 200 students will come up with idea. Out of 200 ideas, only 10 students they come up with prototype. Out of 10 prototypes, only 2 are actually becomes a product. And then we focus only on those 2 prototypes or those 2 products and bring down to the market. So this is how you should have innovation pipeline or innovation funneling for your entire year, so that after your academic year, at least 2 startups should graduate from your campus. For pharmacy, I'm talking about. Maybe for engineering institutions, because they have a strength of 2000 3000 students, they have this huge pipeline or huge funneling activity. They start with 3000 students where they orient these kind of sessions to 3000 students, and later on they could bring down some 10 to 15 ideas at the end. But at least for pharmacy institutions where we have a base of 500 to 700 students, we can start with this, and at least you should target 2 successful startups every year. So this is how you have to create, you have to design this funneling activity right from the beginning. Students should expose to this entrepreneurship syllabus or entrepreneurship curriculum, entrepreneurship activities right from the beginning, so that maybe at third year he should sense that he even can think of commercializing his own innovation. So that problem solving attribute should be learned by the students. Next, the norms for faculty and startups. There are various norms are there which has been recommended for faculty startups. So if we are talking about student startups, but similarly we have faculty startups as well. We are basically right now mentoring one of the institution at Andhra Pradesh, a pharmacy institution at Andhra Pradesh, and we have created, we have started Enrich Startup Center, our signature program over there, where we have right now we are working on two projects which are by the faculty itself. So one is basically have some product in herbal, and one is having one product in cosmetics. So these are purely faculty members. So they have their own research. Okay. So in that case, when faculty is a full-time employee of any institution, even government, even MHRD allows these faculty to work on their own startup. Now, when we consider own startup, it is basically their own company. And a faculty at same time is working for an institution as an employee, as well as their own startup founder. Just a moment. So in that case, NISP has recommended few of the policies, few of the terms and conditions for these faculty startups, but even the conflict of interest should not be there. Next, pedagogy and learning interventions for entrepreneurship development. As I said earlier, institutions should focus on building or designing a curriculum for entrepreneurship. Even NISP has recommended that they should start annual idea club or startup club or innovation and entrepreneurship award or business model competition. Similar kind of efforts should be there for the entire year. So academic institutions anyways, they have a list of activities for the entire year, and they should come up with some of the student startup clubs or e-sales, or the awards should be there. So similar kind of activities should be there through which students can be engaged in this kind of activities. Like most of the management institutions, we run business model competitions where we ideate the students with some of the ideas, and they basically bring down some of the great business models. Okay. One more thing which even government does every time is Start India Hackathon. They have we can have hackathons as well. We can have ideathons as well. So similar kind of efforts students, even institutions can take in this regard. Next is collaboration, co-creation, business relationships, and knowledge exchange. I'll give you a simple example over here: collaboration, co-creation, and business relationship. For example, now you are running a pharmacy institution, but in case if you require any support for including AI or machine learning into your product, you can collaborate with other engineering incubation center. For example, in Pune, we have VIT, we have MIT, we have even Midcon, we have Bhav Incubation Center. So your institute can collaborate with their incubation center, and whenever you require any equipments, utilities, resources, even the technologies like this, your students can visit their campus, and as a part of this business relationship and knowledge exchange, they can utilize or they can imbibe these technologies in their startups. So this is how you should bring this collaborative environment for creating these successful startups. And at the end of the year, you should have impact assessment. So whatever activities you are doing for the entire year, you should have a complete impact assessment. Like for this year, if we have initiated some 10 startup activities or 10 different activities, you should have a proper assessment of all these activities, and you should calculate a success rate of all these activities. So this was all about the NISP. And last part, which I'll be sharing within couple of minutes, is startup and entrepreneurship opportunities precisely in healthcare. So right now, when we see healthcare startups, which is in our country with only one doctor per 1,000 people. Now that's the irony which our country has today, that we have only one doctor per 1,000 people. Now, when we see such kind of market here, no doubt we have huge opportunities to work in this sector. And considering opportunistic market or sunrise sector for healthcare startups in the upcoming 5 years, we should consider all the sectors in healthcare. So on this platform, we have several subsectors as well for healthcare startups. You can brainstorm your ideas, or you can bring down some of the working model, or you can ideate something in the sectors like online pharmacy. We have personal health management, we have home healthcare. Fitness and wellness industry is booming right from the beginning of this COVID-19. Telemedicine is the need of our diagnostics or diagnostic kits, biotech R&D, medical devices, healthcare IT, biopharm, and genomics. These are several subsectors you should consider while ideating for any kind of startups, right? For this, you should create either of this. Either your product should promote affordable healthcare, or preventive healthcare, or portable medical devices. These are the top 3 target segments you can choose in order to ideate something for healthcare startups. And last, these are some of the examples of top Indian healthcare startups, starting from online pharmacy, the well-known startups like 1mg, Pharmacy, Netmeds. These are some of the top Indian healthcare startups. I'm not going in detail about the debate on online pharmacy is good or bad. I'm just giving you the case studies and examples of all these startups. Now, personal health management, My Upchar, Cure Joy. These are the examples of personal health management. Medical devices, we have Wealthy Therapeutics, Beto, Forest Health. For fitness and wellness, even most of the cricketers and Bollywood celebrities are becoming a part of fitness and wellness industries as an investors. So even Virat Kohli is actually acting as an investor in fitness and wellness industry. Even CureFit is the brand which is endorsed by Hrithik Roshan. So Hrithik Roshan is basically an investor on CureFit. CureFit is a product of the same co-founder or the same startup founder who has brought Jabong.com. So Jabong.com, he sold this Jabong.com to Flipkart, and later on he started CureFit by using the investment by Hrithik Roshan. Even GoQ is basically promoted by Akshay Kumar. So he has even investment in this fitness and wellness startup. Next is home healthcare. There we have example of Healthians. So if you could simply check out the website of Healthians, you could see the posters, some of the posters of Yuvraj Singh. So Yuvraj Singh has invested 300 CR in this Healthians startup, which is basically under the category of home healthcare. Diagnostics, we have the best startup or best healthcare startup of the year 2020 example, that is Niramai. So Niramai is exceptionally great startup when we think of Indian healthcare. So Niramai is basically into diagnosis of breast cancer. So ideally, what problem they are solving of the customer or precisely the patients. So basically, diagnosis of breast cancer is basically a tedious process and painful process. Even it is costly process as well. So Niramai has created a technology, created a product, created kits by using artificial intelligence and machine learning, through which within 15 minutes, patients is basically can have all these activities done, which is absolutely pain-free breast cancer diagnosis method, plus it is cheaper one. So Niramai last year has been awarded by Government of India as one of the best healthcare startup for 2020. Next is healthcare IT and data. Practo is the one which I can recommend for students to consider this as a case study, because Practo is world's leading healthcare startups, which is the best example of student startup. So Practo, two co-founders of Practo, they initiated their startup journey when at the age of 20. So two mechanical engineering students from NIT Bangalore, at the age of 20, they ideated Practo, and today Practo is world's leading healthcare startup. Next to this, Innovator, Healthplix, even Live Health from Pune. So these are some of the examples of healthcare IT. In telemedicine, we have Libret as well. Practo is there, DocSap is there, MFine is there. So these are some of the examples of top Indian healthcare startups. So we have huge opportunity ahead of us considering Indian healthcare system. And in each category, whatever categories I have mentioned over here, you can ideate all the solutions, not just limited to herbal drugs, not just limited to cosmetics. You can eventually expose to maximum subsectors of our healthcare. You have to see how you can solve the customer's pain point, how you can utilize technology, that is the latter part. So there we as an startup accelerators, there we as a mentor could help all these students, all these researchers or innovators. Like if you have something in your mind, if you are done with your prototype, we can help you and we can assist you or mentor you, like how you can use a technology to make this possible. So don't rely, or don't be just scared of, like you do not have the technology knowledge, but eventually start deploying or start ideating the solutions for the actual pain points of the patients. Because being a pharma professional, you can better understand their pain points or their burning problems, and eventually when you ideate this, we can bring down some of the great products ahead of time. And that's the last slide which I want to add here. That's basically, we cannot afford to experiment on our patients, and that's the reason why Indian healthcare is one of the very last industries to be disrupted by technology, and that's the fact. So whenever we create some apps or some engine parts or some other things in food or in agriculture, we can afford on experiments, we can afford on trial and error, but this is absolutely not possible for healthcare. So because we cannot afford to experiment or trial and error on our patients, we cannot uh, you know uh, build some disruptive products in the market. So that's the end slide, that's the concluding slide from my end, and I hope to see much more startups in early days or early years to come from pharmacy institutions as well. The way DYP group or DYP Pimpri group is working on incubation and the entrepreneurship opportunities for the students, it is really appreciable. Only thing is the students should accept this particular fact, and they should create their own entrepreneurship journey uh, with their own healthcare startups. So once again, I'm thankful to Dr. Chitlange sir, all the organizers, faculty members, and all the students for having me here. And I hope to interact with all the students physically as well in the upcoming months to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It was really enriching session for us. We learned lot many about startups, terminologies, basics of startup and innovation, and hope students also get aware about the various opportunities in the startups in their upcoming career. Now I request the participants, if they have questions, they can ask. We have one question in chat box.
Yes, we have one question in chat box. If faculty startup selected by international accelerator, what are guidelines of national innovation and startup policy? So there you have to refer criteria number 8 of NISP, where there is clear cut, the guidelines have been framed by NISP, by which how faculty startup can initiate their own startups and they can commercialize their activity, where a single person is in a role of faculty, in a faculty as well as a startup founder.
Okay. Any more questions from students? They can unmute themselves and ask the question. Okay. So we have questions from organizing. Yes, sir. Anyone? Okay. So we are started with ideation and prototype competition in our college. And as you, in one of the slide, you showed us that how the ideation funnel should work. And suggest we want guidelines from you that how should we check the feasibility and applicability while funneling those ideas for to prototypes and further for to startups.
Right. For that matter, you need to have a clear-cut feedback by the unknown customers. If you are ready with a working model, you should bring down to at least a few of the customers, maybe 10, 20, 50, whatever samples you have. You should distribute those samples along with the feedback sheet so that you can validate your idea. If that idea is getting validated, then you can so that's the latter stage. So I recommend the faculty as well as students, if at idea stage you do not or you don't think about business model, you should focus only on building a perfect product. When you are or when you have perfect product, then you should think of business model. And this is how a funnel innovation funnel actually works.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
So generation of funds is a real challenge when we are working on any prototypes or any product. So
right.
Can you give us some clues for how to pitch our idea to the investor?
Yes. Now, there are actually two funding channels. One is funding for student startups and other one is funding for incubation centers. When I talk about funding for student startups, in that case, unless and until you are ready with a product, a perfect product, you cannot pitch to the investors. So investors are actually interested in returns. Frankly speaking, they are interested in returns. They are absolutely not interested in what innovation you have built. If I am paying you as an investor, if I am paying you 10 lakh rupees, then I should think like after 5 years, how much I'm getting in return. So that's the mentality which investors have. So in that case, three things that team should have. One is a perfect product. Number two, a perfect business model. And number three, a perfect team. If you have three elements ready with you, then and then only investors are going to entertain you. Number two, for institutions, if even institutions, they have a challenge in raising the funds for incubation centers. In that case, we have different agencies like MSME, we have SIDB, we have DBT, we have DST, we have even AICTs, they have some funds. So institutions with proven track record, with proven list of activities which you do for entrepreneurship awareness can submit your proposals to all these agencies, and they can you can avail the funds for this.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Is there any questions from faculties? Dr. Vishal? Okay. So we also like to know from your side that how these startup accelerators help to academic institutes for building.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Right. So as an accelerator, we basically play important role in pre-incubation, incubation, and acceleration, all three activities. So whenever we collaborate with institutions, we basically see how these institutions can set up their incubation center or startup center. We actually mentor them our own ideation model or innovation funneling model for the institutions, and we became operating partner for that institutions. So we basically handhold these institutions to run pre-incubation and incubation unless and until that product is actually ready for the market. Okay. One more thing, accelerators play important role is resource mobilization. As an accelerator, we have a strong network. So even in case some students or some startups, they need a recommendation or a network or a resource or a consultant or an expertise, we basically play there as an important role as an facilitator. So facilitation of all the activities right from the beginning, idea to prototype and prototype to product and then market launch, we are there in all the stages of this student startup